Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we have a planet of 9 billion people by 2038 and possibly 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century, how are we going to be able to take care of all these people on planet Earth? And that's what Emerald Planet's all about. We come to you looking at the solutions, the best practices from around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet. Hello, welcome to the Emerald Planet. We're making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And seeing the long-term impacts of climate change. We're glad to have you. Thank you for being with us. Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet again. We're looking at the monarch butterflies. The monarchs are the monarchs, if we can play on the name, of the pollinators. And without it, we would not have food on planet Earth. So there, and along with thousands of other pollinators, are critical to the life cycle, not only of the species itself, but also the food chain for all of living beings and all of humanity. And I have a gentleman that's going to be telling us about the monarchs and also the work that he's been doing for a number of years. His name is William H. He goes by Bill Dent. He's the Executive Director of Natural Partners. Full disclosure, I'm on his board of directors. Also, he is the co-chair of the Trees for the Capital with the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C., and I'm co-chair with him on that as well. So Bill and I work very closely together month by month and sometimes week by week. But Bill, welcome back to the Emerald Planet.
Dr. Sam, it's always great.
Tell us a little bit about the Monarch Sister Schools program and why it's so important.
Okay, well, Monarch Sister Schools program started back in 2008 here in Washington, D.C. I had been doing some work with the World Wildlife Fund when I became aware of the problem of the illegal logging that was affecting the overwintering habitat of the monarchs in Mexico. And when I was there, got to know some of the communities, and it occurred to me, because I had been running the North American Association for Environmental Education, that it really would be great to involve school children, the next generation, in the problem of the disappearing habitat, which has contributed so much to the drop in the population, not only the monarchs, who are kind of the canary in the coal mine, but also pollinators in general. And as you mentioned, the pollinators, we depend on pollinators for a lot of our food.
Now, looking at the monarchs themselves, they're absolutely gorgeous. They fit right into their natural habitats. But tell us a little bit about, again, why they're so important as a pollinator, and then how does this actually the poster child for pollinators to protect everything?
Yes, well, the monarchs have been actually one of the most ubiquitous of butterflies. There's an eastern population east of the Rockies and a western population that people who've lived in California have seen in places like Santa Cruz. But the eastern population is unique in the fact that it migrates from southern Canada and northern United States down to Texas, and from there to central Mexico. And this long-lived generation, which we call the Methuselah generation, actually goes to the same groves of trees as their great-great-grandparents.
Yeah, and we're going to be looking at those in just a few minutes. But looking at the interest of these children, it's just incredible to see how engrossed they are as far as the monarchs. Tell us what they're looking at and what is going on in this photograph.
Okay, yes. Well, one of the things that we do with the schools that we work with in the United States is to actually do a workshop with teachers. They build these cages like you see here. And what we usually do, we try to get the larva from the garden of the very same school. So it's one of the first things that the kids can actually do at the very beginning of the school year, is actually go out and look under the leaves of the milkweed. Milkweed is the host plant, the only plant on which the female will lay her eggs. And they can bring the larva in, and actually they have to provide the fresh milkweed leaves, but raise the larva until the larva changes into a chrysalis. It's not a cocoon. Butterflies only have chrysalises. And after about 11, 12 days, the metamorphosis is complete, and a full-fledged, beautiful monarch butterfly emerges.
Now, this is the actual process here. So for our visitors that are watching this right now, both in the United States and around the globe, tell us each stage and talk about the importance of each stage. Yes.
So in this image, you can see on the left is a highly magnified monarch egg. A female will lay about 300 eggs. Always one egg per leaf to ensure adequate food when the egg hatches. And then when it hatches is the first of 5 stages or instars of the caterpillar or larva. And you can see in the second image basically the way a monarch caterpillar looks at the 5th instar stage. Then at the end of that instar, the caterpillar will form into a J shape and kind of shed its skin and form a chrysalis. And it's one of the most beautiful of all the chrysalises in the butterfly kingdom. It has a golden ring around it. And after about 11, 12 days, the full-fledged monarch butterfly will emerge. And it's hard to believe that a butterfly with a wingspan of almost 4 inches can come out of a little chrysalis like that. But it's something beautiful to behold. Then the kids can release the butterfly that they've raised.
Yeah, I tell you, it's just an absolutely beautiful process, and it's something so important. And this is also the, as far as the standards of education, it's part of their science curriculum, correct?
Yes, the beauty of working with the monarch is there's so much that the kids can do. You have not only the life cycle that we were just looking at in the previous slide, but also it's a migratory species. So the kids can learn about migration, what's involved with that. And we do have them, before releasing the butterflies they've raised, usually it's an adult, unless it's an older child, to apply a tag as part of a citizen science project where the data is gathered, and they will send information on, you know, when they tagged it, where they tagged it, whether it was male or female. And then once released in September, this is the generation, the long-lived generation of butterflies that will migrate down to Texas and then from there to central Mexico. And that's what we're looking at here. It's a volcanic mountain range where they love to hang out at an altitude of about 10,000 feet. And here you can see them in a big cluster hanging on an Oyamel tree, which is their favorite tree. About 99% of them hang out on an Oyamel tree. It's just amazing to be there. You've witnessed it yourself, Dr. Sam.
Well,
millions of butterflies.
Yeah, the amazing thing about this, the butterflies will actually land on you. I had several on my hat, shoulder of my jacket. They're actually quite friendly, and they're not afraid of human beings. And they're just beautiful as they move. And when you see them shimmering on the trees and the limbs, it's just absolutely incredible. The whole tree is moving, and it's just a really beautiful sight. But I'm going to go back to this migration pattern here and tell us a little bit about the Rio Grande and why that's such an important point as far as the migration of the monarch butterfly.
Absolutely. Well, the eastern population, east of the Rocky Mountains, as you can see, whether butterfly emerged, was born in Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, or even Montana, they all head down to Texas. And it's just amazing their ability to navigate. And they've finally been able to pinpoint that the navigation is in their antennae, and they can actually calculate where the sun should be and keep on track. So this is another phenomenal thing, which allows them to go to the very same groves of trees. You were there at El Rosario. They have a visitor center because they know the butterflies will come again. I mean, the population's been down, and that's part of the reason why we started the program, is to have more people planting gardens. But it is truly one of the amazing phenomena of nature.
Now, looking at the science curricula, you're planting these monarch gardens, and many people that plant their own gardens have what's called the Monarch Byway. And it's amazing to see these signs, just popping up all over the Washington, D.C. area, both in downtown Washington, D.C., out in Maryland and Virginia, and see the number of homes now are becoming involved in this Monarch Butterfly program that started through the schools.
Yes, it's really quite exciting. We ourselves have been instrumental in getting about 50 schools in Washington, Maryland, Virginia to plant pollinator gardens that are really butterfly gardens. They incorporate milkweed, which is the host plant of the monarch in particular, and the monarchs need the milkweed because that's the only plant that their larvae will eat. So these lesson plans, these curriculum guides have a series of lesson plans that start with the garden itself, and the kids get to know a lot about the plants, and it's a real important connection for many of them for the first time with nature. It's amazing how many kids these days don't have that connection.
Now they're going to obtaining the butterfly and go through all these stages as far as the educational program. We're seeing the whole life cycle right here in this stylized image. Tell us what we're looking at, and then we need to finish up very quickly.
Sure. Okay. So the lesson plans deal with the life cycle as well as the migration. And here you can see the life cycle. You can see a rather mature caterpillar. Then the next image is going into a J and then forming the chrysalis. And then by the 11th and 12th day, you can actually see the wings of the butterfly through the sides of the chrysalis, and then they emerge. And that's when we have the teachers apply a tag as part of the citizen science project, and the children get to release the butterflies, which is really thrilling, knowing that the butterfly they have in their hand will go all the way to Mexico, and then we have a way of connecting them in Mexico.
I'm going to leave this up. What do you see for the growth and expansion as far as the Sister Schools program for the monarch butterflies over the next 5, 10, and 15 years? We got to be quick.
Okay. Well, we're very excited. We've had contacts with the Ministry of Foreign Relations, and they are quite interested in our program. So we're hoping to increase the number of schools and increase the cultural exchange between the U.S. schools and the Mexican schools, all about this amazing shared species that migrates from one country to the other.
That's fantastic. This is William Dent of Natural Partners, the Monarch Sister Schools program. Thank you for being with us as we look around the globe and create the Emerald Planet. Welcome to the Emerald Planet TV. We're talking about the Monarch Sister Schools program, and this is sponsored through Natural Partners and the Emerald Planet International Foundation, and the Emerald Planet TV are certainly partners in this program, and I'm also on the board with Natural Partners. But we have William H. Bill Dent, who is Executive Director of Natural Partners, co-chair of Trees for the Capital, and also he works very closely and executive director with the Monarch Sister Schools program. So, Bill, welcome back to the Emerald Planet TV.
Dr. Sam, it's always a pleasure. Great to be here.
Now, looking at the monarchs themselves, they really are, as they say, the poster child as far as pollinators. But tell us, what is a pollinator, and why would this number of children, parents, teachers go out in the dirt, start digging around, get all dirty, being outside for a pollinator?
Okay, first of all, pollinators. Well over half of our food relies on not only bees, but butterflies, even hummingbirds are pollinators. They manage to physically move pollen from one part of a plant to another plant in the same species and provide the pollination. Without the pollination, you wouldn't have your apples and pears, for example, right? So, or your squash and so on and so forth. So pollination is very important for us human beings. The monarch butterfly also from the flowers gets nectar, and that's what fuels them.
Now, looking at what we're looking at here, as far as the parents, the students, the teachers getting involved, looking at the STEM and the STEAM, let's define what those two terms are if we can, Bill. And, and again, why is it so important to have these monarch butterfly gardens?
All right. They're important for people, the students, and they're important for the butterflies and other pollinators. Why are they important for people? First of all, the gardens are a great way of connecting the kids with nature. Many kids these days, you know, playing the video games or on their devices, and they just don't have the contact with nature that our generation, Dr. Sam, had. I used to be out in the woods. All right. For the pollinators, we've planted over 50 gardens so far between the U.S. and Mexico, and they provide the natural habitat. All the plants that go into our gardens are native plants. Okay, and native plants serve native pollinators, and the pollinators need habitat, and we need the pollinators for our food. So it's all kind of a web of life, you know.
Now, looking at the children and the teachers that we're seeing here, and I think there's a couple of parents as well, why is it so important to have them out in nature to actually be establishing these pollinator gardens and be a part of that process? Because by the time all these plants mature, they're going to be up in the upper grades, maybe even have graduated from school.
Yeah, what we do plant are perennials, which will come back every year. The milkweed is also a perennial and has beautiful flowers. But the kids, usually we just don't plant a pollinator garden. We also plant a vegetable garden. So it's a way of letting them know where their food comes from, what the plants look like, and having the satisfaction of actually producing some food. And usually that food is used at the school.
I was going to say the amazing part about that is actually the cafeterias now are taking that produce that the students are actually growing and putting it in their lunches or even for some of the breakfasts.
Exactly. So you can only imagine it gives the kids a totally different perspective on what they're eating, and it encourages better nutrition because then they get more interested in eating the veggies, the famous veggies.
One of the things too about having the children involved, as we see here, it is physical activity, and understand that this is something that's very important as far as physical education and incorporating this in the broader curricula. So they're actually getting fresh air, they're outdoors, they're getting some sunshine, but actually physical activity that many of the children were not getting for many years.
Yes, the physical activity is important, and also it breaks down a mental barrier between them and the world outside. You know, so of course,
Now, looking at them handling shovels and being involved in very manual labor, getting dirty, in other words, why is that so important that they learn these skills? These are very simple skills, but yet this is something probably they'll carry through to the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I would argue that it helps build self-confidence. We really believe a lot in learning by doing. So they're learning by doing. I mean, it's not somebody lecturing at them. They're actually planting a plant. They're watching it grow. They're taking care. They're doing the weeding, the watering. Okay. We usually have them put signs. What is it that they've planted? In the pollinator gardens, we even have a stakeholder idea where each child will adopt a plant, put their name on one side of a little stake, and the name of the plant on the other side.
Now, these gardens are actually quite lovely. And looking at the aesthetics of these, how does this actually reach out to the greater community beyond the students, the parents, and the children themselves, and involve the community?
Yeah, well, for starters, the parents. And we try to put the gardens close to the entrance where when the parents drop their children off, they can accompany the progress of the garden. And with the signage this particular garden doesn't have signage, but the signage I was just describing, that also has an educational value and ties in with the arts part that I'll be talking about in a little while.
Now, looking at the garden that we have here in front of us, is this incorporating both the pollinator garden and vegetable garden? Because I see it looks like some ornamentals that are in here as well.
This is just a pollinator garden.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It was an inner city school. They weren't interested in doing the vegetable garden at that point.
Mm-hmm. Getting parents involved, why is that so important? And how do you actually recruit the parents so that they actually do become involved with their children in this process? And in essence, they're supporting the teachers at the same time to involve the children with the pollinators, but also with the outdoors.
Right. The teachers tend to be very busy, as you can imagine, but the parents, usually some of them have a green thumb. They grew up doing some gardening, had a vegetable garden, maybe a garden around their house. So the garden can be a wonderful bridge, a shared activity between their children and themselves. And we think that's a very positive aspect. And then the garden, as I mentioned, can be a great outdoor classroom with the signage that's installed. And when it comes to milkweed, actually having the kids look for the larva under the leaves, bringing in that larva to raise until they emerge as butterflies, and then releasing the butterflies.
Now, looking at the interaction between parents and teachers, what's happening there, and why is that such a positive experience for both the teachers and the parents to have this open communications through the gardens, the pollinators, and their children?
Well, I think these days there just aren't enough shared activities, and this is pardon the pun, a natural one. You know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be done. It's not done during the school day, but it's when the parents are available. So that can be an after-school activity, or it can be a weekend activity. And you and I are Rotarians, and actually it's been a number of the Rotary clubs that have helped us with preparing the ground and overseeing the kids doing the planting, and then the actual upkeep of the gardens. Because you can plant a garden in one day, but the care is forever. And we encourage the formation of green teams between the parents and the children.
Now, looking at the children really getting up close and personal as far as the plants are concerned, how do you think that really helps to change them as far as their perspective? Because most of these children are either very densely packed suburban areas, or built conditions within density areas of the cities. So how does this interaction between the plant, the earth, and the child really change their lives?
Well, I think it's a new experience for many of them who maybe at home, even if they live in a house, just never got involved in the garden. So I think plants in green have a healing, beneficial effect. And then the butterflies and the pollinators themselves kind of have their own effect. As a matter of fact, there's an expression about the butterfly effect or the monarch effect. There's something magical about these creatures.
Well, looking at the signage here, and also these are very mature plants that are growing up around the sign. I mean, this is just really a breathtaking scene as far as nature is concerned. And so looking at bringing in the greater community as well as the teachers, the parents, the children, why is this signage so important to everyone in the community?
Yeah. Well, these gardens are planted at schools. So in keeping with that, making the garden educational is great. And it should be educational not only for the children, the students at the school, but the parents. And it just gives that extra dimension. I mean, I think we all of us who are curious would like to get to know our native plants. And we only plant native perennials. And part of our strategy is actually do a plant sale and encourage the parents in their own backyard to plant a similar garden.
That's fantastic. And talk about signage. We have it here, but we're going to go out on this. We're just about out of time. What do you see for the growth and expansion as far as the communities and the schools being involved with the monarchs themselves, and also with planting these different gardens, whether it's for the ornamentals or for the vegetables? And we got to be quick.
Okay. Well, we want to grow in the U.S. and Mexico. In the U.S., more and more schools already have gardens, but we can make them more educational. And we help in fundraising. We help through a cultural exchange, a communication. So getting multiple benefits for the school out of our program.
This is William Dent, Natural Partners, co-chair of the Trees for the Capital, as we create the Emerald Planet. We're talking about the Monarch Sister Schools program, Natural Partners, and the Monarch butterflies, and how they are the poster childs as far as the pollinating the plants, the food. About 50% of it that humans eat actually come through the pollinators. Very important. But also it's very important to join together, because the monarchs travel across, live in 3 different countries: Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And also through the Monarch Sister Schools program, we're talking about how we have the interaction of the students with the teachers, the parents, and the communities in each of these countries. And we have William H. Bill Dent, who is the Executive Director of Natural Partners, also Executive Director of the Monarch Sister Schools program, and co-chair for Trees for the Capital of the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. And Bill, welcome back to the Emerald Planet.
Dr. Sam, thank you. It's great to be here.
Always good to have you. And looking at joining the 3 countries together, this is really a NAFTA project, if you will. But a lot of the interactions between Mexico and the United States. Tell us why the monarchs are traveling back and forth and really becoming ambassadors for our countries among human beings.
Yes, we see the monarch as, shall we say, a bridge between the countries, because they literally move. They're citizens of all 3 countries. They may be born in Canada, travel to the United States, and spend the winter in Mexico. So It's a beautiful butterfly, and it's a shared species, and it's something that we can all rally and unite around.
Yeah. Looking at this tracking device that's actually on the butterfly, tell us about the nature or the origin as far as this tracking device and why these are so important.
Yes, well, originally we didn't even know that the butterflies in Canada or northern U.S. were the same ones that spend the winter or in Mexico. And it was through Mr. Urquhart, who developed a very primitive version of these little tags. They're extremely light. It's not really a burden for the monarchs. And the National Wildlife Foundation and others have developed these tags and used them to confirm the routes, the migratory routes of the monarchs. And they all converge, as it turns out, on the Rio Grande before going down to Mexico on their journey south. Then they spend 4.5 months in the forest, Oyamel forest of Michoacan. And you and I have been there. And it's quite a sight with millions of them congregating, coming off the trees in the afternoon and flying around, enjoying the sunlight. But it's truly an amazing connection with nature to see this species that manages to return to the very same place, the same groves of trees as where their great-grandparents were, and then find their way back to Texas.
I just think it's absolutely incredible. Tell us a little bit about this area of Mexico. Why is it so important? And why do you think the monarch butterflies ended up being able to nest in this very specific place, and they can come back on an annualized basis?
Mm-hmm. Well, the monarch is a tropical butterfly in the sense that its eggs will not survive the winter up north. So somehow, we don't know if it goes back 1 million years or how long it is, but at some point they started making this migration, and they make this journey south and then the journey back north. The journey south is done by this Methuselah generation. They spend the 4.5 months in the forest of Morelia. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see Sitacuaro. Anyway, in that area where the arrow is. And that's the area where they go. There's a volcanic mountain range that connects the Sierra Madre east with the Sierra Madre west. And for some reason, the monarchs love the Oyamel tree, which is found from altitude of about 7,500 feet up to 10,000 feet. And
yeah, this is really a beautiful area, and I've been there twice now. There's much activity goes on in these communities centered around the monarchs. But tell us how the monarch actually has become a part of the folklore, and also why it's important to the schools and the children that they be involved with the monarch butterfly. And then we'll talk about how that actually then transcends back into the sister schools and the sister and brother connections they have between the children and the teachers between the two countries.
Mm-hmm. Great question. Well, the monarchs leave this area, Washington, D.C., in late September, and they get down to Mexico around the 1st of November. And the native people, and actually many of the communities where we work, are indigenous communities, and they have a tradition called the Day of the Dead. And the monarchs, for them, represent returning souls. And as a part of the cultural exchange that we do between the U.S. schools and the Mexican schools down there near the Monarch Butterfly Biosphere Reserve, we have, as one of the sessions we do via Skype, is a session on a tradition. So the month of November in Mexico is the Day of the Dead, and that's very colorful. It's something that's very close to each family. They're remembering the family members who've passed. And then, of course, in the U.S., the month of November is Thanksgiving. So the U.S. kids usually will talk about our tradition of Thanksgiving, what it means in the family gatherings, too.
Now, working with the schools, that's a brilliant idea to start with the children. Then you're reaching to the teachers and then out to the parents and again into the greater community. But why have the schools in Mexico so much involved with the schools in Washington, D.C. and the United States?
Well, we were very fortunate to find a great program coordinator in Mexico, Jesus Arriaga. And the first school that we worked with was the school pictured in the image here. But as I said, we really wanted to involve the younger generation in the problem of the declining populations of the pollinators in general and the monarchs specifically. The monarch population at one point was down 90%. And it's been gradually building back, but it's far from what it was. And that's why the planting of the gardens in the US, which is the breeding habitat, and the restoration of the forest down in Mexico, which were suffering from illegal logging and now are suffering from plantations of avocados. And so we've gotten the kids involved in raising baby trees. And once a year at the beginning of the rainy season, which is June, the kids, we finance their going up into the forest in areas that either have been burned or logged to do a restoration project.
Now, looking at the children in the classroom, how do you involve them with not just the trees, but also learning about the science as far as the monarchs, the trees, the vegetable gardens? What are they actually, what types of educational skills are they gaining through the curricula that's been developed for them?
Mm-hmm. Well, our program coordinator, Jesus Arriaga, whom I mentioned, he does a series of supplemental workshops with the kids with hands-on activities that supplement what the teachers are doing. And it's a perfect fit with the existing curriculum. And we've been very well accepted. And as a matter of fact, we are in discussions with government authorities to look for ways that we could expand the program into more schools, because they find that the kind of enrichment we provide is really a good thing.
Now, looking at this diagram here, we've seen this before, but now we're using this in Mexico. And a lot of the educational materials developed in the United States is now being shared there. So how does this supplement the studies that they're doing as far as the science, even geography, history, soils, agronomy? There's so many different lessons that can come out of just the monarch butterfly and its whole life cycle.
Yes, so, this image literally captures the life cycle. Then there's the migration. So there's that part, which is science. But then there are a lot of other activities that Jesus does in Mexico and our coordinator here in the US does that supplement the learning. So there's STEM, stands for science, technology, engineering, and math, which is a very in thing in the schools. And we have schools here in Washington, D.C. that are, quote, STEM schools. We add A for arts. And the kids do a lot of drawing, which heightens their powers of observation. It's very participatory. Keep a science journal. And also we do have workshops on other subjects, such as climate change.
And these textbooks are very important for them. But I tell you, getting out in nature, and actually I've been to the site where we have this photograph taken, this interaction between the soil, the trees, the vegetation, the adults, how do you see this really changing education in Mexico but also just the protection of the environment itself. And we'll probably go out on that question, Bill.
Okay. Well, it does create a lot of awareness, but these are hands-on activities that literally connect the kids with plants, and plants are very important in our lives, whether it's the vegetable gardens or the role of the pollinators, understanding that, because what we're trying to promote is a more sustainable lifestyle. These are rural communities, and these are skills that the kids can use and maybe keep them connected with the land.
And also keep them connected with the monarchs. And this is the last question, Bill. What do you see for the protection through the schools, the interactions, their forestry projects to actually protect these very monarchs we're looking at right here? And they've got to be quick. I'm going to go about 10 seconds.
Well, in Mexico, it's the overwintering habitat. If those trees aren't there, the monarchs aren't going to have any place. They won't have the shelter that they need. And the forest also has a lot of flowers, which provides the nectar for them so they can survive the winter.
Okay, this is Bill Dent, Natural Partners, also the Monarch Sister School program, as we create the Emerald Planet. Looking at the exchanges, education, and also the geography, history, mathematics, all the STEM and the STEAM classroom projects and educational programs has actually been partnered with Natural Partners. And they created the Monarch Sister Schools program. And we have William H. Bill Dent, who is Executive Director of Natural Partners, co-chair of Trees for the Capital through the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C., and also the creator and executive director for the Monarch Sister Schools program. So, Bill, welcome back to the Emerald Planet TV and talking about your own program, Natural Partners.
Dr. Sam, great to be here.
Tell us about Natural Partners. What is it, and what led that then in turn to create the Monarch Sister Schools program?
Yes, well, Natural Partners goes back to the year 2000 when I did work with the World Wildlife Fund in Brazil. We actually started doing a lot of programs, including in the area of forestry, and we were focused on the Atlantic rainforest, which, as I describe it, is Brazil's other rainforest. Everybody knows the Amazon. The Atlantic rainforest extended from the northeastern corner of Brazil, that's the part closest to Africa, all the way down practically to the border with Uruguay and into Paraguay. It has a biodiversity comparable to the Amazon and was an amazing place to work. And we started there, and we did a lot of work with local environmental nonprofits. And I did a program called Proviveros, which was to actually help them run tree nurseries, because that's what's needed to restore the forest. A lot of it, in the case of the Atlantic rainforest, only 7% is left.
Now, looking at Mexico, we're fast forward from Brazil into Mexico. Why this area of Mexico as far as the Sister Schools program, focusing on the monarchs? And what is this doing as far as education for Mexico itself, and maybe even bringing change to the curricula for Mexico?
Yes, well, I had become aware of the problem of the loss of forest. Again, my connection with forest, I'm a tree hugger from way back. But I had heard that the poor monarchs were literally having the trees cut from under them. And yours truly said, I've got to do something about this. All right. So I had an intern, just coincidentally from Mexico. And I said to Cesar, find out who's working on this problem of the illegal logging of the forest where the monarchs go. So he said, the World Wildlife Fund's working on it. So I got in touch with them, did some work with them. But I realized that we really needed to involve the younger generation. And where the monarchs go is mainly the state that's highlighted in purple on this map, the state of Michoacan. And it's an area just a couple hours west of Mexico City.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there a number of times and happened to visit some of the schools through a local NGO. Anyway, it all started there in 2007, 2008.
Now, where the monarch butterfly reserves are, this is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Why is that so important as far as protecting the monarchs and also to have support from the communities, both in Mexico and the United States?
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, this particular site is where over 90% of all the monarchs go, and it was recognized as, you know, something very special because the monarch is unique in its migration. There's no other butterfly species in North America that does that. So the Mexican government itself designated it as a reserve, and it was ratified by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site.
I tell you, that's absolutely fantastic, and it's absolutely beautiful. We've seen this photograph before, but I'm always at awe with this. Tell us about this mountain range, why it's so unique, and then when we look at the monarchs here, just literally hanging out in this forest, it's an incredible sight.
It truly is. Yes, there's this volcanic mountain range, and you can see a lot of extinct volcanoes. And the monarchs just happen to like this area and the Oyamel tree that grows at altitude of 7,500 to 10,000 feet. So I dragged you, Dr. Sam, up to 10,000 feet, and that's where the monarchs are. And it's truly phenomenal. They gather by the millions on the Oyamel trees in the afternoon. In the sunlight, when it warms up, they come off and they fly around, and all you can hear is the sound of the butterfly wings.
Yeah, and it's just incredible to actually watch them, drinking the water. But this is really the crux of everything right here as far as these seedlings. Tell us a little bit about these trees, why they're unique and important, and then why is it so important to have the schools with their own nurseries actually raising these seedlings?
Mm-hmm. Well, the forest in that area has been logged, and also there have been some forest fires involving the younger generation and creating awareness amongst them and their parents, because kids have a way of being able to get a message across to their parents, perhaps more effectively than some of the politicians or others. But we have each school that we work with in Mexico has a school tree nursery, and the kids are involved in raising the baby trees, the seedlings. And then at the beginning of the raining season in June, they go up on one of the mountainsides that needs some restoration work to plant the trees. The younger children can be involved with the raising of the seedlings, but it's usually the older children that are the ones that go up and do the planting. And we work at all levels. We have from pre-K schools who have their little gardens to high school students. And now we're even entering into an agreement with the local university.
Now, looking at the land here, tell us the unique part about this land. Who owns it, and how are the landowners involved in this process?
Great question. Something I overlooked. In Mexico, you have collective ownership of the rural lands. Going back to the Mexican Revolution around 1910, there had been private ownership. The church had owned a lot of land too. All the land was broken up into either ejidos or indigenous communities. So there's collective ownership, there's self-governance, Certain families who were the original founding families of those ejidos or indigenous communities are the ones who, are involved. And each of those communities will usually have a couple grade schools and then a middle school or that kind of thing. But they're doing all this work on their own lands in most cases.
So what the students that we're looking at here, they actually, their parents or their grandparents or the extended family actually have joint ownership of this land?
That's right. It's a very different system from ours, but it works.
Now, looking at the planting of this, how do they learn to plant the trees and then the long-term care of them? Because I was in 4-H. That was actually one of my 2 first projects was forestry. Had to go out and plant the tree seedlings. And my land looked very much just like what I'm looking at right here.
Yes. Well, they do have to go up on the mountains. They get some training through our program coordinator, Jesus Arriaga. They're physically fit and able to, hike up the mountain. We provide transportation as far up as we can go with the seedling plants. And we do this all at the beginning of the raining season so that they have a few months to take root and get established. And the kids love it. They really do.
Now, looking at the adults, are most of these teachers, their parents, their landowners, a combination of all the above? How do you get the adults to be involved in this process and to go out and support the children and the high school students?
We do have a few teachers who have, taken a strong interest and participate, and they in turn have invited the parents, the padres de familia, as they're called. Just as in the U.S., the Mexican schools do have PTAs, and I always am introduced to the president of each PTA, who is an important ally for us at each school. Fortunately, the World Wildlife Fund has also done some work with the adults who many times have their own tree nurseries and are also involved. So there are multiple actors here.
Now, what is and we're just about out of time, Bill, but what is the long-term benefit of having all these ages from pre-kindergarten all the way through high school, now the university involved? What does this forebode for the long-term development and protection of these forests by having all these different ages as well as the adults involved in this process?
Well, first and foremost, it's very important to create an awareness of the problem, which was the loss of habitat that was affecting wildlife in general, and the monarch in particular. So there's the awareness factor. And then over the last 10 years, we've actually been able to restore something on the order of like 50 acres of forest. So, there's a tangible, real physical achievement.
Yeah, and that's significant when you can do that. We're going to leave this image up. I like this, the color, the activity, and all that. What do you see for the growth and expansion, the Monarch Sister Schools program, and also the nurseries within each of these schools in Mexico? And we got to be quick.
Okay. Well, we've been fortunate to get some recognition by the government of Mexico, in the case of Mexico. And we had meetings in February about that. We're looking to expand into the state of Mexico, which divides, the reserve is divided between 2 states, Michoacan and Mexico State. So we're very excited about the possibilities of working with many more schools and tapping into new resources. We're even talking about creating a sister NGO.
Fantastic. Thank you. Bill Dent, Natural Partners, Monarch Sister Schools program, as we create the Emerald Planet.